Hello everybody, it's a pleasure to meet you via this video. My name is Edelstein. I'm the Executive Director of the Jewish Educators Assembly. I've had the pleasure of working with your instructor, Lonna Picker, for many years. She's a terrific friend and a marvelous educator, and we've done a lot of great things together in Jewish education. I hope that the comments and remarks that I have to make will be helpful to you. I wish we had the opportunity to meet in person, but I guess this is the next best thing. I come to you over the years having worked as an educational director and a youth director in a very large suburban congregation. Also headed to Solomon Schechter Day School for a good number of years. And of course now I'm working as the head of the Jewish Educators Assembly, working with heads of school, principals, education directors all across the country, involved in all different aspects of Jewish education. The topic, of course, of supervision is a very important one because it is really what is most critical to your work as an educator, as an administrator in the field of Jewish education. You are always only as good as your team, your staff, your faculty, and you cannot produce the day-to-day work in the classroom or the day-to-day work in a youth group. It really remains up to your staff, and your job is to get the best out of them and to really create the community, the environment, the nurturing situation that helps them to grow and helps them to be at their best in inspiring families, involving students, and of course in educating. And to underscore that point, it's an old joke, but you probably all know it, that in a school, the only person who's not replaced when they're absent is the principal. School runs just fine on a day-to-day basis without the principal. Teachers are, of course, replaced immediately with substitutes. So you want to keep that in mind as you do your staff development. Lana had asked me to start off with sharing what was a great staff development program that I did. I don't really have one particular one to recommend, really more a technique that I think is important in staff development, and that is the idea of interaction, exchange, sharing among the faculty members or staff members. We really have to take their experience and their expertise into account. Each one of them is at least a somewhat experienced professional. They've gained knowledge, they've gained background, they've gained skills, and they have something to share, and they also need to digest and interpret and kind of internalize whatever your presenter or speaker is talking about. So the idea of bringing in an expert in a particular area to do a staff development program and letting that person talk at the teachers for an hour, and then not really giving any time for them not only to ask questions, but to really exchange among themselves, I think is a mistake. We know that we always want to seem to give the most amount of time to the expert, but I really believe very strongly in giving time to the teachers as well. So the idea of breaking down into smaller groups, allowing them to synthesize their learning, allowing them to discuss, allowing them to come up with questions, allowing them to put what is being said and being taught in the context of their own work, I think is a tremendously important piece and really should not be overlooked in staff development. We do it in our classrooms, we do it in other learning settings. I think that that's a very important piece of staff development and one to keep in mind as you plan. I want to go now to some of the questions that you asked and see if I can respond and give you as much concrete information as I possibly can. Though I do want to say by way of introduction, the questions, some of them are very specific, and I'm not going to answer them in as a concrete way as you might like, but I'll try to do my best. I think that to a certain extent there are two or three overarching techniques, concepts that really answer all of the questions And I think it comes down to communication. I think it comes down to common sense. And I think it comes down to building relationships. Um, and I'm going to plug those into the answers as we go. But again, communication, common sense, building relationships. In many ways, those concepts transcend all and are a key part of supervision. Starting off with Carrie, and Carrie, of course, I know your mom, and I think we've met a couple of times over the years. Not your mom, it's your mother-in-law. I apologize. Um, but you start off with a few really good questions. You want us to know about supplementary education. What is it that it's supplementing? Are there skills unique to Jewish education that help make this goal become a reality? And how do you teach them to your staff? What we're supplementing, of course, is the rest of the general education that our students are getting. And the piece that is so very unique to Jewish education is the idea that we're not just teaching facts, we're not just teaching skills. More than anything else, we're trying to teach something that is almost unteachable, and that's passion. We're trying to teach passion, we're trying to teach love, Ahavat Yisrael, we're trying to teach beliefs, we're trying to teach values, we're really trying to teach a way of life. And that's a toughie. Obviously, one of the ways we teach it best is by modeling, role modeling our own lives, our own behaviors, the way we conduct ourselves in school, in the classroom, and out of the classroom and out of the school setting as well. We need to have teachers that are excited about teaching that. We need to have teachers that are excited about sharing their lives and their beliefs and their passions. This work is up close and personal, and it's very important to really in the hiring stage to begin with to see that your teachers are comfortable doing that kind of work, that they want to do that kind of work, that they're willing to share a little bit more of themselves personally, and that they truly do embody the values and the ideals and the behaviors that we're trying to teach. It's not always so easy because you can't always find teachers who do that and who embody those things. But I think it's important for you to set the tone by letting your teachers know this is a way of life. This is the real deal. And we need to teach it, to paraphrase V'ahavta, with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our might. And I think that, again, by you setting the tone and living that way and running your school that way and approaching people that way, I think that you model that for your teachers, and hopefully they will model that for their students. Question about the role of the family educator, and you say, was he or she a party planner of sorts, or were they really integral to the higher staff level, and just what role did they play? Clearly, a family educator is not just a party planner. A family educator is woven completely into the fabric of school life, central to the curriculum, a part of the planning process, and really needs to be included from the outset in everything that you do. A good family educator will bring ideas, will bring concepts, will bring skills to the table that you will help integrate. A good family educator will bring those ideas and those creative projects to the classroom teachers as well and help them implement and bring it into their classroom. It really should be a creative process that everyone has a little bit of a say in, a little bit of something to contribute, something to add, and a collaboration really in terms of developing programs and opportunities for parents to learn and families to study and grow together. So definitely not a party planner, certainly an integral piece of the staff that needs to be collaborative, someone who needs to be very collaborative with the rest of the staff in planning programs and activities. And finally, what advice would you give to someone in a supervisory role who's the new kid on the block and who has less knowledge and is much younger than a chunk of the staff? Well, that one I can really speak to personally because I was in that situation. The first time I became an education director, I think I was about 29 years old, and though the synagogue had a lot of faith in me, they were very concerned that many of the teachers had been there for a long time, were much older, and how would they react and how would they handle things. And there I very much come back to what I said at the outset, communication and relationship building. I really took the time to get to know every staff member, what they liked to do, what their style of teaching was, what they felt their strengths were, and I gave them a chance to talk. When we first met, it was, tell me about yourself. Tell me what you think are your best traits and skills as a teacher. What are your favorite times of day in the classroom? And I listened and let them tell me what their strengths were and what they wanted to do. I asked them what kind of changes they would like to see made in the school. If they could wave a magic wand, what would they like? And I listened. You can't do everything, nor should you do everything that they suggest. One of the things that I said to teachers when I came in was, I will always listen to you. I can't promise that I will do everything you want, but I can promise that if I can't do it, I will give you an explanation why. That's the communication piece. That's the trust building piece. That's the relationship building piece. And I think once you do that, the teachers will follow your lead. It takes time. Once they know that they can trust you, once they know that your ideas are solid, once they know that they have your backing, and once they know that they will really be listened to, I think you won't have any trouble at all. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. But that's really how I would go in and approach that. It's very, very doable. We ended up with wonderful, wonderful relationships, wonderful friendships. And in the end, most teachers turned to me and said, that's why I'm a teacher, you're the principal. You lead, you tell me what you want, I'll follow you. But I had to get them to the point where they said it, not where I imposed my will on them. Carrie, hope that answers many of the things that you brought up. Shira, we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, but thank you for your questions, and let's see if I can address them as well. First question is, what did the supervision structure look like when you worked in a large congregation? Did you think it worked? Did everyone ultimately have to report to the rabbi? Good question. Supervision structure is tough, and I don't think there's really much point in talking too much about what it was where I worked, because what matters is what it will be where you work. And it's always different. And supervision structure often is always a work in progress. It evolves, it changes. I certainly wouldn't say that it always comes down to the rabbi. Rabbis see themselves differently, have different styles of working, play different roles in the synagogue and in the school, and it really varies very, very much from place to place. Again, kind of as I echoed before, communication is always letting your supervisor or supervisors, or even the people that you work with, even if they're not direct supervisors, letting them know what you're doing, what your needs are. It's asking questions. Never be afraid to ask. And not only don't be afraid, you will gain respect when you ask questions and when you show that you want to find out and get the information right, and not just do it arbitrarily because you're the principal and you're deciding to do it this way. I was very, very blessed in my large congregation that we had a triumvirate. We had myself, we had a phenomenal executive director, and we had a wonderful, wonderful rabbi. Three of us actually were we knew each other from beforehand, and we became very, very close friends as well as wonderful colleagues. There was a great deal of respect. There was a great deal of admiration. The supervisory structure actually was kind of informal, probably more informal than it should have been. But it worked because we just clicked. And we consulted with one another, and we collaborated. And I never felt that I had to check with somebody, but I wanted to check with somebody. I wanted to make sure that they were aware. I wanted to make sure that I covered myself, that I was doing something the right way, and make sure that everyone was in on the process and on the same page. It worked very, very well. Obviously, there were financial matters and budgetary things that I worked with the executive director more closely on, school policy, curriculum issues that I worked more closely with the rabbi on, and it clicked because we all talked with one another and met regularly. I said it was fluid, and I think just to share an interesting story from that, when I first came into that situation, the policy was that the rabbi had to interview prospective staff members before I hired them. So I would do the interviewing. When I was ready to hire somebody, I then sent them up to the rabbi for an interview, and if it was okay with the rabbi, then the person could be hired. Well, we were both there for a good length of time together, and after a while, the rabbi would say to me, "Oh, just let me meet them. I don't have to interview them. Let me just say hello." And then he would say, "If you're going to have somebody in, just let me know. I'll try to stop by and meet them." And then as more time went by, it became, "You know who you're hiring. I don't have to meet them. Oh, you're fine with what you're doing." So I think that tends to happen in the supervisory structure over time as you build trust, and as people come to know you. So, don't get your back up at first at why do I have to check this with this one, or why do I have to check this with that one. It will change with time, and it will soften, and it will lighten up. You will earn that trust by communicating, by sharing, and by doing what's asked of you. It tends to work out better. Supervisory structures always look tough on paper and work out much, much better live in person, as long as you do your share and collaborate and play the role that you're supposed to play. What is the biggest challenge I faced as a supervisor, as an educational director in a large congregation? I think it probably comes down to not letting people fall through the cracks, making sure that everyone feels important, that everyone feels recognized. The supervisory piece of that, really no different, big school, small school. Being aware of what's going on in the classrooms. Everyone has their own style of supervision. I like to walk around. I was out there in the hallways, in the classrooms. Almost every day I walked through every classroom. And it took teachers a little while to become comfortable with that. And I always told them that if I walk in when it's a bad moment, I'm giving them the right to say, "Could you come back another time?" But I walked in not for formal supervision. I always felt that I got more of a sense from a 2, 3, 4, 5 minute visit to a classroom, walking in and out at any given time, than from a formal supervisory observation of a half hour or so. Formal observations certainly play a role, and I did them, and they're important. But I think you get the real pulse of what's going on day to day by that walk in and walk out. And after a while, it got to the point where teachers would say, "Where were you today?" Or "I missed you today," or "Why didn't you come in?" And often when I would come in, they would have the student show off something they were doing, or sing something for me, or read something for me, and it would become a fun thing. Sometimes I'd even get involved in a little team teaching with the teachers, and we'd play off one another. And I think it created a nice environment. And obviously, just in a larger school, it takes a little more time to do that. But I think it's an important piece, and I think that worked well. In my opinion, what was the most successful professional development workshop I prepared for my staff, and what made it so successful? hard to pick one out. I thought about the question beforehand. Again, as I said at the outset, I think one of the keys is the interactive piece, making sure that teachers have a chance to talk to one another, to share, to exchange their ideas and information, to ask. Kind of doesn't matter what the topic was or is, but give them that chance to talk. Um, I think an exciting piece, if you can arrange it in professional development workshop, is if you have the opportunity to get together with another school or a few other schools in a cluster group, and bring teachers together. It's always exciting for them to hear and see what other teachers are doing, what's going on in other schools, that others have the same issues and challenges that they face, the same questions. That's always a nice opportunity to bring people together, and I think they grow and they learn from that, from hearing from other staffs as well as from their own. The other topic that's I think is always very meaningful, and always very important, is the whole area of special needs. Um, there is no school today without children with special needs. We know about differentiated learning. We know about learning styles. These are all terribly, terribly important topics. One of the things that we have learned, because there is a lot of work done on it, and sometimes teachers kind of react and say, enough with the special needs already, I know. But what I think is particularly successful about workshops on special needs is that we know that what we do for special needs children is also equally important for all children, for all students. The techniques that we use, some of the modifications, the idea, for example, of not giving complex directions, but giving simple directions in smaller pieces that children can digest, making sure that children are focused physically in the room, that there aren't distracting elements and things going on, making sure that instructions are repeated, making sure that instructions and other directions are given both orally and in written form, because you have visual learners and you have oral learners. All these techniques, those are just a few examples. I don't want to do a whole workshop right now, but those few examples are things that we know are important for all children. All children. So I think when you, I think some of the workshops that I've done on special needs have been the most significant and most successful because they really apply to all, and we can expand those skills out to everyone. Finally, I'm assuming as a youth director, you supervise many people who are part-time. How did you go about doing this? What were your greatest success challenges as a supervisor of informal educators? Well, the challenge, of course, is that I could get in trouble in some places for saying this, but I'll say it anyway. Some of our informal educators are doing this. They love it. They're doing it for fun. They're doing it for a little extra money. They're doing it because they love the kids. They're not necessarily doing it professionally. They're not necessarily doing it as a career, and may not have the same skills or the same interest in training or professionalizing as some of as we would with a teaching staff or a more professional staff. But I think that the overall techniques that you want to use are very, very much the same. You want to do relationship building. You want to communicate. You want to give them instant feedback. Something I did not mention earlier, it's especially good with informal educators, but good with all teachers, is you want to compliment. Don't forget to compliment. Let them know when they're doing something good. Let them know something nice that you saw in their classroom. Let them know something that you thought was particularly exciting and dynamic. And then you build a reputation for being fair. You don't want to be the person who is only telling them when they're doing something wrong. You don't want to be the person who's always correcting them. You want to be the person who has a very even-handed and fair approach, so that way when you do say, here's a suggestion, here's something you might do differently, they'll be much more receptive because they know, oh no, not here, he or she is again to complain about me again. they'll know that there's some validity to what you have to say. The approach connected with that I think works especially well with informal educators, but again with everybody, is let them self-assess and let them tell you what worked, what didn't work. You have a youth group setting, you have a youth leader who runs a program, an activity. Some things go well, some things don't. Sit down afterwards and have them tell you, so how do you think the evening went? What worked? What didn't work? What were the issues? What would you do differently next time? And let them do it. Your supervision will be much more effective when they're able to self-identify. You don't have to hit them over the head with the list of all the things that they did wrong, and give them a little wiggle room also. If you saw 5 things that went wrong, and you go through the list with them and they identify 4, you don't necessarily have to hit them. If it wasn't all that significant, don't hit them over the head with the 5th thing. Let it go. You'll save that for another time. And let them identify and let them come up with what the issues were. It doesn't always work, but a lot of the time it does. If you have somebody who's weaker, who has more significant problems, you may have to, get more involved in correcting them and pointing out, and a little more intensive formal supervision. But for the most part, I think that kind of, let's give it a quick review. What do you think worked? What didn't work? What might we do differently next time? And elicit the responses from them, really, I think, is a great way to go with informal supervision. And don't forget to tell them something that they're doing well and you liked. I think that covers most of our questions for now. I hope this has been helpful. I want to wish you guys a lot of luck. I hope this continues to be a wonderful exchange and exploration in this course with Lonna, and perhaps we'll have the chance to be involved and share together again at some future point. But good luck. If you have other questions, I'd be glad to respond by either in the forum or by email or video, or however you like. Bye-bye.